It's Friday, baby dolls, and that means On Cooldown brings you the news. This week we have a new patch with new class changes to check out and talk about all the things new in 8.1.5. Of course, not everything was placed in the patch notes, but it won't escape our eyes this time, because other people already documented them. There have been hotfixes following up the patch release with some Mythic Plus changes to the completion time. Also, with the new allied races, we have discounts for race changes, faction changes, and more. Among the store updates Blizzard has given us, could this be finally something that we can agree on? Classic WoW has had an update on how it will roll out its content. Is it good or bad? Stick around to find out. Oh, hello. Didn't see you there. So, you came to watch the news? Well, you will get the news. It's been a fun week for WoW, so let's discuss it with my buddy, Orc. Thanks, very handsome person. Although not as big as 8.1, we had buffs and nerfs with 8.1.5, so let's quickly go through them. Death Knights cannot use trinkets and potions and not break Wraithwalk in the process. Said trinkets and any other source of frost damage will not synergize anymore with Rune of Razor Eyes. Say bye bye to Everchill Anchor and Tidal Surge. Also, a nice hotfix to the unholy trait Magus of the Dead, where it will now properly scale with haste. Going down to the Demon Hunter, Netherwalk has received a quality of life change and can now be cancelled while pressing it a second time. This is a super nice change, and we can only hope they do the same for Bladestorm, and we can get rid of unnecessary macros. Druids have received some love, and Boomkins will rejoice. Celestial Alignment has had its tooltip changed to reflect the extra 40 astral power it provides. The 40 astral power will also be a part of Incarnation as well, even though the tooltip does not say this at the moment. Although, considering it's an upgrade to Celestial Alignments, we can probably infer that from context. Feral has received a tooltip change as well for the PvP talent Leader of the Pack that will probably matter only to groups that do World PvP or Battlegrounds. It will now more accurately reflect the fact that the entire raid will be buffed as long as they are within 40 yards. Another PvP talent, this time for Restoration Druids, will actually get a nerf. The Guardian Affinity will provide 10% less chance to be crit by melee attacks, down from 20%. Is this too much? Will this bring Restore Druids in line with the other healers? Outside of PvP, Restore Druids have received more changes. Entangling Roots and Hibernate have had their mana cost reduced significantly. Dreamwalk can be cast again to return you to your origin point, similar to Death Knight's Death Gate. Also, Innervate will no longer apply to cat form abilities. Hunters have also received some much needed love. We covered last week's Beast Mastery buffs, which have seen Beast Masters already rising through the ranks in raids. Keep your eyes open because the patch has only just started. For marksmanship, Explosive Shot will still trigger even if the target dies before the 3 seconds are up, and it will trigger at the target's location. Also, marksmanships have received some buffs that apparently were supposed to be in the game to their damage. The numbers are still a mystery, but with those buffs, marksmanship is currently the best performing hunter spec in Battle for the Zara lore. Survival has been addressed, and if you're still leveling your hunter and you are not level 62 or higher, you could find some abilities incomplete before their full effect is learned at level 62 because reasons. Binding Shot has been buffed to an 8-second root in PvE, up from 5 seconds. In PvP, you will still get rooted for 3 seconds only. Similar to Netherwalk, Aspect of the Turtle can be cancelled by pressing it again. Frost Mages have received a buff to Frozen Orbs damage, plus a new glyph that changes the cosmetic effect of Arcane Intellect to look like the Kirin Tor's Dalaran Brilliance, a much needed change in my opinion. Windwalker Monks have received several fixes to Whirlwind Dragon Punch, Storm, Earth and Fire, Fist of Fury and Fury of Zuen, so they can work properly and as intended. The talent Energizing Elixir will no longer grant you full energy, but regenerate 75 energy over 5 seconds, but still granting 2 chi. All Paladin specs have received an upgrade to Avenging Wrath. Holy will receive crit on the first Holy Shock, Protection will get a crit on the first Light of the Protector, and Red will get a crit on the first Templar Verdict or Divine Storm. On top of that, mana reduction to Freedom, Blinding Light, and Repentance, which will benefit Holy the most in PvP since the mana changes have affected healers tremendously. Also, the Azerite trait Righteous Conviction has had its tooltip adapted to showcase that it will affect Light and Hand of the Protector variants of the spell. Down to Priests. Holy has received a slight rework to Symbol of Hope, where it will restore 2% mana for all healers in the raid instantly and again every 1 second for 5 seconds. Similar to Netherwalk, Shadow Priests can deactivate Dispersion by pressing it again. Also, some general mana cost changes that Holy and Discipline might be happy to hear. Mind Control mana cost increased by 200%. Oh, okay, no, not this one, my bad. Dispel Magic and Psychic Scream mana cost was reduced by 60% and Shackle Undead reduced by 70%. It won't be enough to see them rise in arenas, but it's a good start. Rogues have been addressed as well. Mind Numbing Poison will now affect Deadly Poison and Wound Poison. Outlaw has received a buff to Adrenaline Rush, where it will now also provide 50 max energy for its duration. Also, if you die and you have talented into Vigor, you will resurrect with full energy. More changes to Shaman, some which you might already know. Lightning Lasso for Elementals has been nerfed to 5 seconds from 6. Ascendance has been buffed to also instantly heal all allies within 20 yards for a big chunk, equally distributed among them. Earthbind Totem now costs 400 mana as opposed to the 0 mana cost previously, and High Tide will provide us with a spell alert. But we also have mana cost reduction to Purge and Earth Grab Totem. An Azerite trait has been addressed for each spec of the Shaman. Roiling Storm will now buff your Stormbringer Storm Strikes with extra damage and give you the Stormbringer proc every 20 seconds. Spouting Spirits has been nerfed to no longer interact with Ascendants, and Echo of the Elementals has been fixed to make sure the new Elementals properly cast their own spells. Also, a big bug has been fixed with Resto Shamans. Previously, you could cast Unleash Life while in Ghost Wolf, and this gave Resto some survivability, especially in arenas. Apparently, that was a bug and it got fixed. And lastly, the Warlock. Specifically, Demonology has received a few nerfs. This is why we can't have nice things. Explosive potential has been nerfed, and rightfully so, by 35%, propelling Demonology back down to where it was ever since BFA started. Not rightfully so. I am personally upset about the amount of the nerf and not the nerf itself. There are of course other classes that deserve attention as well. However, Demonology has been underperforming since the release of BFA and has always played behind the other two due to a lack of an interrupt, which is a very sought after in today's dungeons and raids, and damage overall. Not only was Demo over buffed for a few weeks, it's now over nerfed from what it seems. Explosive potential is still a good trait to pick, but no longer performs on the same level as other traits for other DPS specs. We will keep an eye open on its performance, but if the trend follows the last few days, it will continuously decline. Before we check out the last bits of our segment, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We do weekly class guides, WoW news, live streams, and much more, so the best way to keep in touch with everything is to make sure you're the first one to get it when they're live. We rely and appreciate your support every step of the way, and if you want to go the extra mile, we already have a Patreon page that you can check out. Really, thanks for being with us guys while we follow our passion and dream. We love you all. We talked about the class changes, and last week we covered some of the new things that 8.1.5 offered. Let's discuss a few more obscure things and some that were not even mentioned. Wintergrasp is now an epic battleground that will find its way into the battleground rotation. For this week, however, you can actually queue for Wintergrasp specifically. Not to mention that starting with 8.1.5, people who have disabled XP gain will be queued separately for battlegrounds. What? People who have disabled XP? What's that? Well, my dear viewer, those people are called twinks. Essentially, you get a character to level 19, 29, 39 or so on and give it the best possible gear for its level, either via professions, dungeons or auction house. Essentially, it becomes the best version of itself and you block XP so you don't level up and be taken outside of your level bracket where your gear was relevant. And when you fight other people, mostly in battlegrounds, the gear difference, enchants, gems and whatever else you use for your twink will put you in a different league, making the average person's experience a nightmare. I'm talking about one-sided stomps. But hey, twinking is actually a cool part of the game, and now people who actually enjoy playing a twink can play only with other twinks, which is a win-win, right? Except for those monsters that simply want to watch the other people burn for their own pleasure. There have been some updates to Mythic Plus dungeons. King's Rest and Shrine of the Storm have had their time limit increased by 3 minutes. Siege of Borealis, Temple of Cethralis and the Motherlode have received a few tweaks here and there, with animation speed reduction for Call of Deep, damage reduction to a few spells for Temple, and you know, all in all good stuff so you won't get bored. But the raid was not forgotten. As we start to reach the end of the Zara lore, well, not really, since we won't have the next raids here for a few months, but Crucible will be out soon. We will see more nerfs so more people can finish the raid. I feel complete. This week, Jaina's HP has been reduced by 5% for all difficulties, and on Mythic, the Tide Elemental has had its health reduced by 35%, while the Chilling Touch damage was reduced by 10%, also only on Mythic. There are a lot more things that you guys can discover and do in this patch. Things like Hottie models, Hottie mounts, and more Hottie interactions because we miss Hottie and it was cruel of Blizzard to take her away. It's a she, get over it. Darkmoon Faire has some weird hats and the only question I have is why? And as we all know, Warsong Gulch and Arathi Basin have received some artwork upgrades which we covered previously, but the maps have been improved as well. Moving on, we have the Blizzard store. Now, relax, it's not that bad. We have 2 of the most anticipated allied races and subjects of dispute now available to play. Some of us will level them from scratch to unlock their heritage armor, meaning I will make either my 4th hunter or 3rd warrior yet. Don't judge me. But some of you will want to simply race change without the hassle. Well, there's a sale on Blizzard services that will run until March the 31st with a discount to character transfers, faction changes and race changes. The discounts are 30% in value and they are welcome because, let's be honest, at least some of you thought about race changing and I doubt all of you are willing to level your troll from scratch and gear it up again as your main. The offer is limited, so make sure you get it before it runs out. Lastly, on today's episode, on to WoW Classic. For those of you who played vanilla, you would remember that not everything was available at launch, which is not a big deal, it's the same with every expansion that followed. The talk was that there will be 4 phases of content release that would progressively add dungeons, raids and events. That has changed and updated to 6 phases, which are still lacking some info about the PvP side of things as well. What do you guys think? I've played Classic, but that was on a private server, so I never got to experience the phases and that's a part of the game I will always regret not experiencing. The opening of Ahn'Qiraj, the Scourge invasion just before Naxxramas. After the patch nerfs to Demonology, Affliction has really became the best spec for raiding when it comes to Warlocks. And we already have a guide on Affliction, so go check it out. You will learn how to play Affliction in raids and mythic dungeons right now. Thanks for watching the video, see you next time!